Hello and welcome back. This will be the first episode of a series that we will be doing for this particular job on the edge of the National Forest out here in the Great Northwest. And one of the most beautiful job sites I've had the pleasure of building on. We will be constructing a 3,200 square foot home, a new custom home from the ground up. And here you can see I am pulling tape, my 100-foot tape, and finding the footprint and making sure that we are starting out square. After I loosely find my width and my length of my building, then I measure across for the angle, the diagonal, as it's known very often, and more specifically the hypotenuse that exists when you run Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And in the next couple of videos that will follow in this series, we will break down finding square and building square for both foundation work and framing layout. Of course, every time you're using ground marking paint and you're running an excavator, you're bound to dig up what you have painted, and so there's always a process of painting and digging, reestablishing where you're at, and double checking yourself for accuracy along the way. So for here you can see that I'm within a few inches of where I want my corner to land, and that's good enough for now. And as we come up out of the dirt, we get more and more precise. And when we get to the framing, you'll see that process repeated. What you're looking at here is some structural post layout. The posts that will be supporting the structural beams above will land there, and they'll be reinforced with thickened concrete and steel mats. And this is our string line connected to the batter board, which we use as our baseline for measurement. So the guy here in the foreground working his butt off on the shovel and the rake is Jason. He is the homeowner, and in this case he's working as a laborer, but he's far more than that. He's a skilled carpenter. He's great with a tractor and an excavator. He seems like an all-around great guy. Normally I don't like to work with clients on their jobs, but I think this is going to be the exception. So we've jumped forward here, and you can see we've started to get some of our forms in. And you'll see here that I am cutting, I forget how many verts, as they're known, basically vertical rebar that will be bent at 90 degrees, wired and connected into the trench, and will jut up for us to connect into our stem wall, which will happen later on. Just to give you a sense of how many of these verts needed to be installed into the footing, we had to put these in at 16 inches on center, and the footing width was 36 feet wide, by 53 feet 6 inches long. And these are the number 4 half-inch rebar that was bent and installed in 3 laps around the front where the moment frame will be constructed. And as of yet, there's no spacers put in there, but you'll see that here shortly. In this foundation, we decided to form the outside and let the inside portion of the footing be earth formed. And now you'll see I'm installing the dobies, as they're called, basically 3-inch concrete bricks with a little bit of wire protruding. Looks like a bag tie, and I go around and I tie these roughly every 4 feet to get the rebar up out of the ground. You may not be able to tell here, but it was awfully hot on a couple of these days. And while you're walking around and trying to walk in between rebar and tie this stuff in, it can be a little frustrating. But it's part of the job. Now that we've got our dobies in, and you can see the verts have been bent at 90 degrees, like I mentioned before, now we're going to go ahead and move them from one side to the other so that they're easy to grab when the pour happens. Well, this was the morning of the first pour for the footing, and on this day we poured a little over 14 yards of mud. And you'll see Travis has joined us, and we're just prepping everything for the trucks and the pump. And here you'll see Jason putting form release on the inside of the forms in hopes that all these forms will break away easily later after the concrete is dried. And the fourth fella here is Donovan. He comes out from Mike Schultz Concrete Pumping. He's a great guy. He's jumped in on a number of occasions now and really put in the extra effort when it comes to pouring and sometimes helping to finish concrete. One of the steps that I didn't do a very good job of capturing so far in the video was the use of the grade rod and the laser transit. That setup will help you to identify your elevations at your corners and your walls and make sure that you're as level as possible, and that will make forming and installing your stem wall much easier. If you look closely here, you'll see the little bit of topography that was left in the footing from the rake. This will leave a nice cold joint for adhesion when we build our stem wall. As always, thanks for tuning in. We've got a long way to go. We hope to see you soon.